had a chance to redo it?
I would take more photos if I had a chance to do it over. That's the main thing, and I would take better notes, and I would write in my diary, because I go to that page and that time in my diary and it's blank, and I wish I would have kept a diary.
Well, she's looking at doing an exhibit, and I said that's probably the best choice because there's not a lot of pictures to choose from. You know, they're limited as what we can find, at least right now. So, okay, go on, honey. Okay.
Right, John? Could you possibly give an encounter of the challenges you had?
The challenges were, first of all, I was a really shy person. So I didn't want to stand out, and I was very young. So a lot of the older kids kind of ignored me. Like Bruce and them, they didn't think any kids, like in the junior high or in the elementary school, really counted or were going to wear armbands or something. So we weren't really in on it or anything. But the other challenge was the haters. The haters heard about what we did, and they started throwing red paint at our house. Some people calling us communists. Some people called our house and threatened to bomb our house on Christmas Eve. One lady called the house after Christmas and said, "Is this Mary Beth Tinker?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "I'm going to kill you." And I was like, ah! You know, I couldn't believe this person was trying to kill me just because I was speaking for peace at Christmas time. So those were some of the challenges, but what do you think were some other challenges?
Or a specific encounter that you had with someone that...
You got beat up. Well, there was, here, I mean, at Roosevelt at the time, Roosevelt was a very different school at that time. Roosevelt was almost exclusively a white school, and well-to-do. Many of the students, most of the students were pretty well off, and had a very strong sense of itself as the best school in town, and in scary ways superior to everybody else. Always disturbed many of us, but and so yeah, I got more trouble from some other students, and not all the students, or even most of the students, but you know, mostly the football team.
Okay.
Encounters?
You know, I had some unpleasant encounters, but one in the swimming pool, the guy dunked me. It wasn't that serious, honestly. I don't really have war stories about horrible things that happened.
Mostly it was some adults that kind of bullied us with hate mail, and some of that mail is in the museum, strangely enough.
And we have access to that too. I have an account, so we have access to that too.
Yeah, that part was
The kids were really not as intolerant as the adults might have thought they would be. I think the kids are generally more tolerant than adults about differences of opinion. I don't know, I didn't have an angry encounter with the principal when he kicked me out. We talked for about 45 minutes, and he was actually rather respectful of me during our conversations, so I really don't have any complaints about it. I know Chris had a real rough time when he was kicked out. He came...
Probably with Blackman, not with Dean Blackman. He was the one with the arm that didn't function, and he used it as a weapon against students. He would actually throw kids against the locker and stuff like that.
And when he came in...
It wasn't the most pleasant school.
Chris kind of marched into school and turned himself in because he knew he was going to be kicked out, and along the way he had some unpleasant encounters with people, with students.
At what point in the whole process did it turn from the idea of protesting against the war to First Amendment rights? Where was that point
Well, really,
at?
after the suspension. So in other words, the case went on with the ACLU and Tinker, and that's why I guess it's the Tinker case, although Eckhart was a part of it too. But I chose not to be because I graduated in January, doubled up my credits so I could get out of here, and went on to the University of Iowa. anxious to go on to college and to raise hell there with at the university. So so I wasn't really interested in continuing the issue of just free speech at Roosevelt High School. To me, the issue was always the war, and this was just a secondary thing in the way of fighting the war.
Okay.
Which often free speech, of course, comes up that way. You're really pursuing some other goal, and in this case, much of it then turned, for some folks, the focus turned to the armband itself and the right of that. For me, it went on to be the war.
When you decided to pursue the case, did you start with the ACLU or did you start somewhere else first?
Well, the Iowa Civil Liberties Union and Louise Noun provided funding to hire a lawyer, and I think actually Dan was pro bono, but the preparing the brief and so on was required money. But yeah, we started the Iowa Civil Liberties Union and then the ACLU. We got a call from William Kunstler, the radical lawyer, and the Eckharts and the Tinker parents, our parents, asked around and were warned away from Bill Kunstler because he was perceived as a radical. And it's kind of ironic because, like, my mother later in years identified more and more with being a radical, and actually worked with Mr. Kunstler on a case in St. Louis later. But basically, it was the Iowa Civil Liberties Union and the ACLU.
Okay. So what else, honey?
Caitlin.
I know she's got a long list here, so go ahead, honey.
How did this
Our family? I think our family, it was kind of an alienating experience in a way. We felt like we were different from other people in some ways, especially after people started things like that.
Okay.
That also affected us.
how did the press treat your family?
The press treated us well in the Des Moines Register overall, I'd say. They came out with an editorial in favor of us, of all of us kids, that we should have had our rights to wear our armbands. And they printed articles that were kind of opinions of different people in Des Moines. They would print some in favor of us and some against us, so it was kind of even-handed in that way. And I'd say they gave a lot of press coverage to us.
What else do you have, honey?
How did your faith impact your decision to wear the armband?
Our faith was critically important because we were raised in the church. John and I were. I think it affected each of us that were participants in different ways. For us, for the Tinker kids, it was very, very important because it was Christmas time, and my dad was a preacher, and he would read to us from the Bible the story of Joseph coming up from Nazareth to the city of David, and how Mary was with him, and the little baby was so poor, and had to be put in a manger, and there was no inn, and the idea that there was hope and faith and love in the world was very, very important. But then when we looked on TV, all we saw was war and hate and killing. And like kids through history, we thought that didn't make sense. Why are these adults talking about love and peace and everything, but in reality, what are they doing? Killing. So I think faith was very important for our family.
Now, Bruce, you were in the LRA.
Yeah, a little. I was around. I actually grew up in the First Christian Church of but hung around some. My buddy Ross was a Unitarian, and so I hung around a little bit with this literary issue. At that point, I already really wasn't religious to speak of, so it didn't have. There was no connection that way.
I think there was a justice issue, wasn't it? I mean, didn't you sense the injustice of the war?
Well, yeah, of course.
I mean, just the evil of it, honestly.
I mean, I thought it was the U.S. trying to impose their will in a country that wanted to run their own country. That's the issue. A lot like it still goes on, sadly.
Yes, unfortunately. Okay, what do you got there next, honey?
Did your teachers and fellow students understand and support you for what you were doing?
Teachers and fellow students.
Did they support you?
Some did. Some students were supportive. Some were not. You know, these were times when it was early on in the war, and there was still a big split in the country as to, or not a big split in the sense that it was evenly split. There was far more support for the war at this time. So yeah, there was a lot of opposition to the weekend. Because there was still a lot of support for the war. A lot of Americans had not gone over there yet. It was not, it was not as big as the war would become, where there was a lot more opposition. This is very early on.